Welcome to the Cinema Gold Show. I'm your host, Larry Lease, and on today's episode, we're diving into the latest box office numbers, as well as giving our review of Missing and Playing. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Audible, for sponsoring this episode. If you're looking for the best place to get your next audiobook from any kind of genre, check out Audible today for a free 3-month trial and free audiobook of your choice. Head on over to audibletrial.com/Larry21. And without further ado, let's dive right in to today's first topic. Avatar: The Way of Water reached rare territory as it topped $2 billion worldwide, leading the domestic box office once again. The James Cameron directed blockbuster came in at number 1 for a 6th weekend in a row with $19.7 million. Despite being down 40% from last weekend, the film marked the 7th best 6th weekend of all time and pushed its totals to $598 million domestically and $2.02 billion globally. The film is now the 6th highest grossing film of all time, with just $24 million to go to pass Avengers: Infinity War for the number 5 spot. Way of Water is looking likely to finish out around $640 million by the end of its box office run, and still has an outside shot at $650 million. It's a nice hit for Disney at this point, and we'll be seeing plenty of more from the franchise going forward. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish continues to show great legs, with the animated sequel down a mere 21% for $11.5 million in its 5th weekend. The Shrek franchise film started off modestly, but is now up to an impressive $126.5 million domestically and $297.5 million globally, making it a profitable venture against its $90 million budget plus marketing. The Last Wish is now looking likely to finish out around $145 million to $150 million, a hit for the studio. Megan, meanwhile, continued to roll in its 3rd weekend as the horror flick was down 46% in its 2nd weekend to $9.8 million. The PG-13 film is a huge hit for Universal with $73.3 million domestically and $124.6 million globally against a budget of just $12 million. The film is likely to close out in the $80 million to $83 million soon, and a sequel has already been dated for 2025. The weekend's sole new release came in at number 4 as Missing grossed $9.3 million. That's a solid start for the Green Eye film from Sony Pictures, which is a somewhat sequel to 2018 Searching. Tracking coming to this weekend was putting Missing in a mid-single digits number, so this is one that the studio has to be happy with. It's 50% above the $6 million start of its predecessor. Missing benefited from Searching's positive reception as well as its own solid regard. Missing had an 83% aggregated score from critics on Rotten Tomatoes with a 91% audience rating. That compares well with the first film's 92% critic score and 87% audience score. The film has held on well throughout the weekend, and that's a good sign for the film's potential legs. Missing cost $7 million to produce plus marketing costs, and it should be able to easily make that back. The first film had $26 million domestically, and this one should be able to hit somewhere around that range. It doesn't open internationally until late next month. And A Man Called Otto earned 30% in its 4th weekend, bringing in $9 million. The dramedy has reached $35.3 million domestically and $55 million globally. And while it still has a bit to go before it makes back its $50 million budget, it has a reasonable shot at it. At this point, a $50 million domestic gross seems fairly likely. Gerard Butler's Plane fell an expected 49% in its 2nd weekend, pulling in $5.3 million. The Lionsgate action thriller is performing solidly, if not great, with $19.5 million domestically and $20.4 million worldwide. The film's budget was a fairly modest $20 million cost, and when the film expands into more international territories, it will have a good chance at turning a profit. The domestic total should end out at around $28 million to $30 million. House Party slipped 55% in its 2nd weekend to bring in just $1.8 million. The Warner Brother remake reps another situation where comedy is not doing well at the box office, as it stands at just $7.2 million domestically after 2 weekends. There's no word on the film's budget, but it should be slipping off of the charts soon and will likely finish out around $12 million or so. Coming in at number 8 was Crunchyroll's The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, the movie Scarlet Bond. The anime film grossed $1.4 million, a far sight from more high-profile anime openings like One Piece Film Red and Dragon Ball Super Superhero. The key here, though, is that it was never expected to get anywhere close to those numbers. Like most anime, this should disappear off the top 10 pretty quickly. Black Panther Wakanda Forever was down 43% in its 11th weekend with $1.4 million. The MCU film now has $451.9 million domestically and $831 million worldwide, with a likely domestic close to $455 million with a budget that was $250 million. The Whale closed out the top 10 with the smallest drop in the top 10, down just 15% to $1.3 million in its 7th weekend. The Brendan Fraser starring drama, has benefited from its award buzz for Fraser and is now at $13.2 million domestically, with a budget of just $3 million. It's doing okay though. It probably had a big budget to campaign for awards. The film will gross over $15 million domestically by the end of its run, and perhaps more. Next weekend, we'll see The Way of Water reign yet again, with the only new release unlikely to make much of a mark in the horror flick Fear. So, to recap, Avatar Way of the Water is at number 1, Puss in Boots The Last Wish finds itself at 2, followed by Megan. Missing at 4, A Man Called Otto at number 5, number 6, Plane, 7 is House Party, followed by The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, the movie, Scarlet Bond at number 8, number 9, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and 10 is The Whale. And now we are going to give our review of Plane. But before we dive into our review, give us a thumbs up if you like our video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. Your support helps the channel grow, upgrade our equipment, bring in new hosts, be able to pay them. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Plane is just the latest action thriller starring Gerard Butler. And while the audiences may be confused with the trailer, the movie proves to be a well-crafted and enjoyable tale of a plane trip gone wrong, and the subsequent escape from a Filipino jungle teeming with militants. Though marketed as a high-octane action film, Plane starts off with a measured and process-oriented approach, similar to Paul Greengrass's United 93. The film's focus on the mundane details of the plane and its passengers makes for an engrossing experience. Despite its B-movie budget, this attention to detail sets the stage for the unexpected turn of events that follows, as the audience is drawn into the story and the tension builds. The unexpected turn of events comes when the vessel's captain, Brody Torrance, must deal with a dangerous prisoner on board. Louis Gaspar, played by Mike Coulter, is being extradited from Torrance's home base of Singapore back to the US because he's wanted for murder. The presence of a dangerous criminal on board adds a layer of drama to the story, and it becomes clear that something is bound to go terribly wrong. The audience is left wondering how the situation will unfold as Torrance tries to make it to his teenage daughter in Hawaii in time for the new year. This plot point also serves to explain why there are only a dozen passengers on board, making for a more streamlined plot and production. The major issue that eventually leads to the plane's emergency landing on the Philippine island of Jolo is a stroke of bad luck coupled with some shoddy maintenance, leaving Trailblazer Airlines Flight 119 vulnerable to the elements. The result is distinctly Lost-esque turbulence and an emergency landing on the Philippine island, shot mostly in Puerto Rico. As with J.J. Abrams' Lost pilot, the air marshal escorting the handcuffed prisoner ends up incapacitated, and the surviving crew and passengers are left radioless and are forced to ration their food. This situation leads to a survival story that keeps the audience on the edge of their seats as the characters are forced to navigate their way through an unknown and dangerous environment. But unlike Lost's assortment of ghosts and smoke monsters, Plane's villainous forces are much easier to parse. They are human militants who have a penchant for kidnapping foreigners. The audience is introduced to these forces early on as the plane crashes in their territory, and the characters are forced to deal with them in order to survive. However, their motives remain as mysterious as any of Abrams' mystery box baddies. The real Jolo is a stronghold for Abu Sayyaf, a Southeast Asian ISIS offshoot, but you'd need no working knowledge of the region to decipher anything of that sort. The film's geopolitics never come close to being explicit, which makes it all the stranger when the image-conscious trailblazer inexplicably sends its own team of private mercenaries to help rescue the survivors and avoid a PR disaster. It's an implicit West versus Asian other framework emerges, more specifically, West versus Islamic terror, if you're familiar with the kidnappings and brutal killings. And it becomes all the more pronounced when it turns out that both the Scotsman Torrance and American Gaspar, who venture into the jungle for help and end up armed to the teeth, have early 2000s military backgrounds of their own. But reality is rarely important in the film, which turns its militants into two-dimensional video game henchmen, who deserve to be dispensed with by virtue of an inherent ruthlessness that threatens the Western passengers. It would be one thing if this were the basis for a ferocious or blood-soaked beat-em-up with ridiculous slayings, but Plane stays grounded in its story and characters, offering a thrilling and engaging experience. In conclusion, Plane is a well-crafted and enjoyable action thriller that offers a unique take on the survival genre. The attention to detail in the beginning of the film sets the stage for an unexpected and thrilling story. The characters are well developed, and the audience is drawn into their plight as they are forced to navigate a dangerous and unknown environment. The villainous forces are easy to parse, and their motives remain mysterious, adding an extra layer of tension to the story. Although the film may not delve deeply into the geopolitical issues surrounding the location of the story, it still provides an engaging and thrilling experience that keeps the audiences on the edge of their seats. Overall, it's a solid action thriller that offers a unique take on the survival genre, and it's definitely worth a watch. And before we move on, I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5. Let us know your thoughts on Plane in the comments section below. Have you seen it? How many stars would you give it? And now on to our next review of Missing. Missing arrived on theaters January 20th. Nicholas D. Johnson and Will Merrick's Missing rides the success of searching into another screen life adaptation about family members seemingly gone without a trace. Johnson and Merrick served as directors of virtual photography and editors on Searching, but now handle both writing and directing duties after Chiganti and co-writer Sev Ohanian hatched a sibling story idea. It's less a sequel and more a filmmaking reunion. Missing inverts Searching by focusing on a computer-illiterate 18-year-old whose mother vanishes. Searching stumbles through technological sleuthing, where Missing puts all the power in someone too comfortable behind a screen. A bold approach, but there's less suspenseful browser crawling and iMessaging this time around. The screen emanates less life. Storm Reed plays our protagonist in a chair, June, or as overprotective Mama Grace Allen calls her, Junebug. The mystery begins when June arrives to pick up Grace and hopeful stepfather Kevin at LAX after their romantic Colombian vacation. June is confused when neither Grace nor Kevin deplane. We're immediately reminded of Searching to the tune of unanswered texts, dial tones with no answer, and a web of lies like Agatha Christie meets Tumblr. Reed isn't afraid of carrying Missing as June connects with U.S. Embassy agents, South American TaskRabbit workers, and besties who appear on her front door security camera feed. Management of screen-recorded elements seem less functional and more cinematic this time. The camera frequently zooms on focal points or disregards the reality of watching, Missing like we're using a computer. Cinematographer Steve Holleran soars through Google Maps street views like we're cruising highways or cycles through window montages without real-time restraints, which feel odd. Searching more strictly respects screen life immersion, where Missing cares less about rigid subgenre rules, unlike films like Unfriended or The Den. Maybe that's a green light for screen life avoiders, but as a viewer who remains enamored by searching and profile, Missing feels harder to accept as fluid screen life navigation. Missing advances like a more theatrical experience versus searching. Reed's panic is palpable as June realizes her only surviving parent, Grace, has become embroiled in a constantly evolving disappearance. Johnson and Merrick help Missing differentiate from searching because of the generational differences between June and John Cho's David Kim, as simple as June typing abbreviated clues via her sticky notes app, versus David's organized Excel spreadsheet. There's a heftier collection of inorganic moments that require the utmost luck. Guessing passwords, constant FaceTime, laptop usage to see Reed's person, sparking an emotional connection with overseas $8 an hour freelancers. But the messier Grace's situation becomes, the more we can't help but engage in curiosity. Johnson and Merrick feel less in control as directors, but that's almost an endearing quality. As Missing spirals into a tangle of true crime special commentaries and pen pal relationship building, June's performance finds new gears. It's ultimately less successful at screen life's authenticity, but more aggressive as a possibly criminal, widely secretive investigation brushes against horror borderlines. And that's as much as you need to know. Missing relies on its unknown elements staying unknown, which are worth enough for the digital roller coaster to experience with fresh eyes. Missing isn't ever an upgrade over searching, despite its more tech-savvy covenants. Yet it is still a serviceable platform when it comes to frantic investigations using Wi-Fi. Nicholas Johnson and Will Merrick veer into their generational lane when it comes to the visual appeal of Missing, embracing more cinematic flourishes that are less strict about screen life definitions. There's an invigoration about Missing that emphatically avoids mimicking searching, both as a positive and negative takeaway. Storm Reed ensures this laptop-captured thrill seeker doesn't ultimately crash and deserves kudos for delivering a screen-grabbing performance via audio conversations, video chats, and sometimes zero supporting help besides a blinking cursor. Missing goes internationally bigger, and while not better, generates ample screen life entertainment. And I'm gonna leave this movie with probably another 3 out of 5 stars. Let us know your thoughts on this movie in the comments section below. And as always, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. Give us a thumbs up if you like our video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.